Alright, so let's first do some basic, just a basic light setup. The lights were super basic, by the way, in this scene. So let's first hide maybe our smoke, and we don't need to see our electricity. Let's first do redshift FDRI. By the way, before you do anything, what I'm going to be using is I'm going to use ACES color space. So make sure you have ACES configured. We're going to use 709. So if you don't know how to configure ACES, I have a video on that. So if you go to my website or on my YouTube, you can go to tutorials, convert textures to ACES. So it's for HDA that I made, but this also explains how to configure ACES. So it doesn't really matter, but we're going to be using ACES color space for all of our lighting shading. That's also what I'm going to be using. So you need to configure this, else your renders will look nothing like mine if you match my values. So just make sure that you configure this before we continue. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's just make a redshift light dome. Maybe I'm gonna just put my render view on down here. Might make more sense. So let's open up our redshift tab here. So I'm just gonna press the redshift thing. And I have a preset for my redshift render. You should have the preset also in your downloads, but just to briefly go over it, I just have some folders here. So folder name that's being used in the output, so it's just easy to sort of set render locations. Glow illumination set to brute force irradiance point cloud. The samples are all just basic default, so nothing too complicated there. We're going to be tweaking these samples and stuff later. So anyway, just make sure that primary GI is set to brute force, secondary set to radiance point cloud. And I put my render folder to $root, which is again what we configured in here. So it's going to be a root folder, and then render 3D, and then we can give a name here. We're going to have multiple ROPs later. So this will be our main. But we can also name that later. So anyway, just so that's configured, let's make sure that our camera is the proper camera. And with that out of the way, we have the basic thing going on. So we have a redshift light dome. Let's remove the environment light and area light that we had before, because we don't need those, because we're going to be using redshift lights. Let's, by the way, color code all of our render nodes properly. Let's also call this our DR ground. And I guess we could color code our lights as well. All right, let's call this HDRI. So we're going to use a base light as an HDRI. I have included a free HDRI in the folder. So if you go to $root/assets, you could go to HDRI, and there should be an HDRI here. It's a very simple, just studio HDRI. Let me just open it. And play always takes a while to open. So you can see it's just a studio HDRI. You can use another HDRI, but this just gives a very simple sort of base light. It's quite low resolution as well, but it's completely fine for what we're going to do now. So let's just fire up our IPR. So yeah, we're left here with with some stuff. You can see the boxes here have a little bit of a problem. They don't have normals. Should probably give those boxes normals. So probably we need to do that inside of. All right. So, oh, that's the ground boxes. So probably need to add some normals here. Maybe we want to even bevel that a little bit. We just have. Yeah, let's do that. Let's poly bevel these edges a little bit before we copy them. So we have some. So we have. We can also turn on subdivision on this later, so they don't turn into squares or into circles. So let's do a very slight bevel and then do two divisions. All right. So then we have these things. So now they should look better. Probably if we go out here and then press render again. So let's have a look at we probably need our ground here, and that is remeshed, so that should be fine. We should assign some materials. So some other things that we probably need to do in order to sort of optimize this, let's make sure that we use packed geometry for rendering, which is something you need to check with, we need to do with Redshift. So if we select our ground boxes, let's go to Redshift. Let's go to instancing and use instance sub-level packed primitives, because if you don't do that, it will unpack it at render time and then not use the packed one. You cannot use unpacked and packed in the same sub, else Redshift will crash. So just so you know, we could probably do the same on our render boxes. So also go to instancing, instance sub-level packed primitives. So that should hopefully all be good. Let's see if it will render without crashing. This will just be faster once we do our final renders. Yeah, you can see it all renders fine. You can see there's no issues with the things there. My ground plane for some reason is not rendering. So let's have a look why that is. Let's do an output here just to be sure. Let's hide some of our other stuff. I'm a little confused why it's not doing the ground plane, but maybe once we assign a material, this will all be fine. Okay, I'm not sure why the ground plane is not showing up, but in any case, let's just assign some materials in a bit and it should be fine. Maybe I do want it to show up, so it's, you know what, let's convert first here. Let's do it a little bit different. Let's just put a convert here and then do a remesh. Okay, it wasn't remeshing because there was no convert there. Okay, then now it should render. I thought the remesh would also just convert it by default, because we were using a polygon mesh. So this is like this is a primitive that we had here, and we didn't have it converted yet. So probably what we want to do is let's check how heavy is this. We could probably change the stuff here. So target size doesn't need to be too big. So now it's quite small. So now we can freeze it. If you press this thing, it will save it into the Houdini file. If it's a light enough thing, that should probably be fine. All right, so now we're left with this thing. Probably want another light, because our basic light here is good enough for just basic stuff. Let's, by the way, put it to Rec 709. You can see it looks a little bit different already. We probably want another light sort of to go there on the left. Let me just go to, let's put my, let's make my Redshift render view down here. Right, press render. And it's just gonna add, just go over here. Just gonna add a Redshift light. Just gonna control click on the Redshift light there. Just go out of there and let's move it a little bit closer. And let's, by the way, look through our camera, and then maybe let's go in here, camera refresh, current drop camera. Let's reload and then lock our camera, because I don't want it to sort of jump around. So let's lock. With this you can lock your camera. And let's make sure the light is not in view here. By the way, let's make it a disk. Let's move it just outside of view. Just something that we can that we're gonna get this nice highlight there. So yeah, we just want gonna get some nice highlight there, and then we get some nice shadows. probably make it, probably the size is fine. What I'm gonna do is, because we have this camera that's rotating, so what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna grab this light and I'm gonna link it to my null here. So this is the null that we use for rotation. I'm gonna link it through the thing. Probably need to reposition it. So I'm just gonna go to camera and press render, and probably our position now for our light is not correct. I want it to be on the right, because that's also what I had in my original thing. Right, so I'm gonna move out of my camera and I'm gonna go to the top view here. Just press M on the keyboard. If you press M, you can sort of move it to in world space. I'm gonna move it over there to the right, like that. And I'm gonna rotate it. I'll probably want to do that in its own space. All right. Really want to move it up just a little bit. But we already get something that looks pretty cool. I maybe wanted to rotate it just slightly. Could maybe make it a little bit smaller so we get a little bit harder shadows. And I'm gonna probably decrease my HDRI in intensity and then increase my regular thing, maybe a little bit bigger. Just gonna maybe 0.8 for the HDRI and then 45 for this light. I think for now this is probably fine. We could probably put this to temperature and to just turn off disable the background, because we don't really need the background for that. And for this, I want like a bluish tint on our light here. Maybe I want to move it a little bit further like that. Right, I think for a basic lighting setup, this should be fine for now. We could rotate our HDRI maybe a little bit, see if that will make a difference and why does my IPR turn off. Gonna rotate it, but it's a pretty generic basic HDRI anyway, so it's not gonna do too much. It's just the HDRI is just basically to just fill it up a little bit. Like if I didn't do that, you can see it's just a little bit harsh. This just fills in a little bit of the light there. So yeah, in terms of a basic light setup, this is fine. And again, we're gonna have the light from our electricity here, which we could already make, by the way. Might be interesting. So let's call this, I guess, key light. And let's do redshift light again. And it's going to be our mesh light, type mesh. And it's going to be, so go to light. It's going to be a mesh light. Let's put it on mesh. And it's going to ask for a mesh object. So that's where our electricity comes in. So you can put in our electricity there. Probably need to reload this. Right, and then you can already see it sort of light up. If you turn off visibility, you see it will only do the light here, which is probably what we want for our main render. We don't want to be visible, we only want to be in the reflections. Let's do temperature, and let's make it nice and blue. And the intensity is probably should be lower. Do visible for now. We could also do color and temperature. Maybe try it with a slightly bluish tint by default, or just let's just do temperature for now. Yeah, let's turn off visibility. Right, so that's just our basic lights out of the way. Looking fine. So now let's start work on some of our materials, because this is just this is looking good. Just a basic light setup. Now let's work on our materials.